Hello there, and welcome to Thank the Maker, a podcast about heroes, princesses, scoundrels, hokey religions, ancient weapons, and all things Star Wars. I'm Adam Russell.
And I am Mike Forster. We have a guest today, as our friends doing musical stuff or having babies are a little preoccupied right now, which is really neat. But
It's
look who we have here.
So selfish, dude.
I really agree.
Families, jobs, get out of here.
I know.
Anyway, returning guest, good friend, and yet another bass player, Deon Rexroat from Anberlin. What's up, bud?
How you doing?
Doing Star Warsingly well this holiday season.
Oh,
fear not. Our normal co-hosts, hosts, whatever we call ourselves. Nick is in the studio with Bayside, which is very exciting for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan Key is any minute now, any day now, any week within the next couple days, popping out that little baby boy. So he's
watching his wife pop out the boy.
Well, that's true. He's helping with loud words of support.
One would hope.
And one would hope, and also staying out of the way of the actual medical professionals who will help his wife do that.
Yeah, that has to be advised.
That was my move. I just tried to stay out of the way of the people who actually knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Right. I tried to. I was like, does anyone need humor?
They need a soda?
Yeah, they were like, nope, we don't need that either. I was like, that's good. Just let me know. I am good to go whenever. I never came down from that adrenaline rush. That was it. That was 7 years ago. So we're very excited for Ryan. We'll obviously keep everyone updated, and Nick should be back with us, I believe, in 2 weeks.
Hey, speak for yourself about being excited, because if this kid pops out on Friday on my birthday and steals my birthday, I'm gonna beat the kid's ass.
I'm actually now that you said that, I think a Friday baby, this has to happen. This is very exciting. Okay, this is good.
Yeah, there goes anyone named Ryan Key. Chances of that man showing up to any birthday party I ever have. Not that I've ever had a birthday party that he's been to, so this is kind of pointless to say.
I'm going to say he should name his son Adam Russell if the baby is born on Friday.
It's a good name, dude. According to some important books, first dude ever was named Adam.
Yeah.
At least one book says that.
That is accurate.
Yeah. It's not in the
It's actually the OT of books in that way. So I like that.
Can we just start referring it to the original trilogy?
The OT, right.
And the new trilogy. Are you a new trilogy guy? No, I'm an original trilogy guy.
I'm actually an OT guy. You know what I mean? I'm in more of that, Sodom and
Fire and Brimstone kind of stuff. That's more.
Yeah. That's what I'm into.
We're super hippie in the new trilogy.
It's like a little too new school for me. I'm not really, into that whole part of it. Exciting episode we have today, Adam. I think for you to bring this out and say we're going to do a podcast on this weird movie that shouldn't be that weird to our fandom. And I remember seeing it and having a lot of feelings about it, but wasn't with my community back then, right? So what are we doing today?
We're talking about a movie that's almost 15 years old. A movie called Fanboys, which if you're looking at the title of this on your podcatcher or on YouTube. You should know the basic premise of this if you're a Star Wars fan and you're listening to this, or you're watching this. It's about a group of Star Wars fans, a group of friends in 1998 who take a road trip to Skywalker Ranch to steal a rough cut of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, before it comes out for their dying friend who has terminal cancer and may not make it to the release of the film. And it's a movie that has a really interesting backstory. The behind-the-scenes stuff is pretty intense. It's stuff that I don't think any of the three of us knew anything about until this week when we started doing research. And it's also a movie that I haven't seen. I had not seen a single scene at all until this week. Mike, you mentioned on the live before that you had seen it in college, but you totally forgot.
Yeah, so at the time I remember watching it because I think for most people who are curious of going, what is this? Fanboys, of course, makes it sound like it in some ways is a fan film, but it almost has the marketing for it in a weird way. It's like the cover of one of the leading key arts for it is Darth Vader's helmet on what essentially would be Steve Carell's 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yes.
With the golden background, right? So like that was a
Yes.
huge, so already right there, you're like, is this like a ripoff? Is this a parody? What is this? And then when you go to watch it, you find out that it's like Danny McBride and Seth Rogen, like Jay Baruchel, and like all these like big name,
all the Judd
comedy
Apatow people.
exactly. At the time it's 2009, right? So like they were getting going, and at this point those guys were like kind of transitioning out of Will Ferrell comedy and getting into the Judd Apatow era, just like Deon said. So there's a lot of reasons why, like, I think this movie doesn't make sense of the reception that it got, but then watching it again, I'm like, this does make sense why that it got. So it's very interesting. I'm curious to hear our discussion on this one.
Deon, what was your experience prior to rewatching it for this, or watching it at all, for that matter?
So you're familiar with Joey from our band, Joey Milligan. You and I had a slight discussion about this. I asked you who was like the guy that always like has the TV on, something going. Joey is the guy in our band that when we're on tour, there's always like a movie or something going on, and he's always got something on. And this was one of those movies years ago before we took a hiatus, which we called it breaking up, ended up being a hiatus.
As one does, as bands do now.
We took a break. We were on a break.
Yeah, we were on a break.
Yeah, so so around the time this movie came out, and for a couple years after, like it was on in our bus a lot, but it wasn't one that I actually sat down and watched. So I would say I probably saw most of the movie in pieces, out like Tarantino style. Like I just not non-sequential, just saw and I was kind of like, I'd check in every now and then. I go about my day or whatever. And so a few nights ago was the first, when Adam asked me about coming on this week, was the first time I actually watched the movie from beginning to end, since probably the first time I saw a scene from the movie was back in 2010, 2011, by the time it got to DVD. So it was interesting to actually put all the pieces in order and experience the movie and the actual story. I honestly, I knew the core storyline of people are trying to steal a Star Wars film before it comes out. I didn't know about the cancer subplot. There was just so much that I didn't know about the movie, because I just
thickens.
Yeah, it thickened a little. It wasn't quite a gravy, but it wasn't quite a
stew.
It was a little bit in between,
Yep.
So but I will say I always thought it was a movie that I hated or didn't care for, but I enjoyed it. It was all right. I think as a Star Wars fan, it kind of took me back to. It's funny that Adam hit me up, because I just finished on Friday. I just finished on Friday rewatching the prequel trilogy.
Nice.
So when he texted me about Fanboys, I was like, well, yeah, I already knew it was about them trying to steal an advanced copy of Phantom Menace. So I was like, oh, well, I'm fresh on that. Let's go. But the movie kind of transported me back to that time where, we heard that there was a new Star Wars movie coming out, and it transported me back to that excitement in a way of going from I never thought there would be more Star Wars films to holy crap, there is a new film coming out. I'm excited. I can't wait for this,
Yeah.
Well, since you mentioned that, before we get into Stolen Plans, do you have any specific memories of seeing The Phantom Menace? Do you remember what theater you were in? Like if you lined up early, do you have any of those kind of like old school movie going memories from it?
Yeah.
Were you in a tent? Was your girlfriend dressed as Princess Hutzler Leia? Like what do you remember?
Well, I would have had one thing you got to know about me. When I was 18, I was not a very desirable male, as they would say. I was a pimple-faced skater kid with like Jinkos, because it was the 90s. It was the style of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm wearing like the only punk rock shirts that I could get were always either large or extra large, because that's all any of the stores around me carried. So like I was probably wearing a Leche Con Carne, no use for name, large shirt with an undershirt underneath, because it was massive. and super baggy jeans and skate shoes. So I wasn't what the ladies were looking for in the small town of Winter Haven, Florida. Surprisingly, you would think that would get me a lot of attention, but no. So no, I didn't see it with my girlfriend. I did see it with two of my best friends. But I grew up down the street from a guy named Adam Dennis, and he was my brother's friend. He's about a year and a half older than me. He was the same age as my brother. He was and still is a massive Star Wars fan. He's the guy that I first learned that the original trilogy had now become episodes 4, 5, and 6 from. And this is easily accessible internet days. Like I'm just like, I was blown away. I was like, what? There's stories before this, there's stories after this that are going to happen, and this was around the time that they announced Phantom Menace, we would draw very unoriginal Star Wars scenes and comics just for fun. We played the Star Wars role playing game. I mean, he was the first person I ever knew that built a lightsaber hilt out of the old metal Die Hard or whatever flashlight.
Everlast,
the silver ones. Everlast, yeah. He built his own like lightsaber hilt out of an old flashlight handle. And so he was definitely one of the guys who was there opening night in a tent, dressed in Jedi garb, ready to see the film. Because it was a small town, we had 2 theaters. And me being in high school at the time, I wasn't allowed to go camp out for 3 days.
Right.
And so I didn't see it opening night. I saw it opening weekend, but not opening night. And I do remember which we can talk about this later, but I do remember just hearing that, 21st Century Fox or 20th Century Fox at the time.
The fanfare,
the fanfare starting, and then just that moment of silence a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then bam, Star Wars logo. And and let's to put in perspective, they had re-released the original films in theaters right before this, the specialized versions. So I had experienced it as an adult in theaters, or as a teenager, more specifically. So I had experienced that before, but I hadn't experienced a new film that I had not seen before in theaters in that way. So that was a crazy special moment for me. And long story short, I enjoyed the film. I walked away from it very confused because I learned a lot of new information. I learned that Palpatine and Vader, as we knew them in the original trilogy, were known as Sith Lords. I didn't know any of this. I was in the Star Wars lore, but I wasn't deep into it. So there was a lot of new things that I learned this movie. So it was a lot to process for sure. And as a Star Wars fan, I appreciate it. I was just like, I wanted more, from that. And then I think, as I digested, I was like, well, there were some things I didn't like too, but you know what? I still enjoyed it. Just seeing some new Force abilities, with like I think the first one that really got me was when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon just
the
take
dash
off down the hallway.
The
Force dash was just like, I was blown away. And then Qui-Gon using his lightsaber to just melt the blasting doors, and my friend Adam, who was reading everything he could consume about Star Wars, was like, well, he actually, when he's using his lightsaber, he can increase and decrease the intensity of the blade. And that's how he was melting door. I was like, okay,
this track. Okay, sure. Why not?
Yeah, so yeah, that, so this movie, Fanboys watching this now in full for the first time really brought back a lot of those feelings of, man, like there was a period when there were only 3 films, and then we just got our worlds rocked when they said there's going to be a new film. And we did not know what was in store for us at all.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and we'll talk about this later, about how different the fandom was then. Partially just because of where culture was, partially because of how a fan base, how a fan base experiences life after something is created, when they're just in the downtime of of no new content coming out for the most part, aside from, you know, stuff on paper. And then how it was maybe after the prequels, around the time that this movie was made, and then how it is now. It's really interesting to compare and contrast, and how we, or you know, how I, at least watching this movie, perceived the fans in the movie, the way they're portrayed. It just it's interesting. I won't give any opinions now, but we'll talk about later. Talk about it later quite a bit.
I think I have a note that I made that Mike's really going to appreciate about the fandom. If you put it in the text of the context of the time. So
yeah,
but yeah, I'll save it.
different time entirely.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump into Stolen Plans and get into this really deep bench of the cast and the cameos and all kinds of really interesting stuff that I learned about this movie this week.
What have you done with those plans?
Fanboys premiered February 6th, 2009, written by Ernie Klein. He has screenplay and story by credits. He's the author of Ready Player One. You may know the name. He also wrote the first screenplay draft of Ready Player One. But ultimately, that went on to be rewritten multiple times, just like this movie. He wrote this screenplay, and then it got a series of rewrites, most notably by Adam F. Goldberg, who is best known for The Goldbergs TV show, and someone named Dan Pulick, Pulick. I didn't recognize the name, and I didn't recognize hardly any of his work, but he did go on to write Quantico, a series that I vaguely remember. It was a drama, like a thriller drama on ABC that ran 2015 to 2018. Otherwise, I don't know. I think he's done a little producing. It was directed by Kyle Newman, who prior to this had only directed a few shorts and an ABC TV movie called The Hollow, starring Kaylee Cuoco from Big Bang Theory. He hasn't done a ton since. He's done a few, I think a couple movies and a few TV shows and things like that. But he has done a few notable music videos, including 2 for Lana Del Rey and 1 for Taylor Swift.
Who are those people?
They're singers from America.
Singers.
They any good? Cool.
That's what people say. They say yes. Pretty huge ensemble cast on this one, like Mike talked about. Sam Huntington plays Eric, the lead. You may have seen him in Detroit Rock City, Not Another Teen Movie, Superman Returns. His first role, this is the funniest IMDb poll yet in the 4 years of this podcast. I lost my shit when I read this. I told my wife, and she about fell off the couch. His first role was in the Microsoft Windows 95 video guide as Joystick Johnny.
Nice. That's a gig, baby. That's a gig.
Hey,
Joystick Johnny.
Johnny.
Sam Huntington was like, if this was about the blossom of Michael Cera, but if you needed someone who was like a believable, timid nerd, I wouldn't say nerd even. I would say if you needed a typical timid kid that was still like Hollywood cute enough to be believable and be able to get the girl, which is how they wrote movies back then. He was it. You know what I mean? Like for me, like Not Another Teen Movie was one of the dumbest movies I've ever seen. And it absolutely impacted my friends and I in regards to how I can't believe Hollywood greenlit that. So like Sam Huntington to me is like, when I think of that era, I'm like, of course he's in this movie. That's who that guy is. Right. It's very funny seeing him and like talk about like a Hollywood, like a shelf life. Like where did he go?
Yeah. I mean, another one who almost could have like played his brother, but plays their friend Linus, Christopher Marquette. The Girl Next Door is probably the first time I saw him. Just Friends. And most recently, this is one of those things where I knew the face, but it didn't click until I read the IMDb. He was on about 5 episodes of Barry on HBO.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's really good. He's grown up to be a pretty solid actor. Dan Fogler plays Hutch. He's that guy, you know, him from Balls of Fury. And he was most recently in the Fantastic Beasts trilogy. He
was also he also played the black sheep uncle in Goldbergs. So Adam F. Goldberg must have enjoyed like his performance or who he was as an actor to put him in the show.
Jay Baruchel, who we all know from all the, Seth Rogen films and everything else. He plays a character named Windows, who's like, the resident nerd with a laptop. Of course, seen him in Knocked Up, Tropic Thunder, This Is the End. And then Kristen Bell as Zoe.
Does anyone know who that is?
I mean, it's Kristen Bell. She's been
America's Sweetheart.
She's been in so many things. It's insane how long her IMDb is. Her first big breakout role, I guess, was Veronica Mars. Then, of course, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, The Good Place, and so on. Good Place, for anyone listening who hasn't watched The Good Place, put in the time. It's like the most brilliant comedy I've seen in 20 years, probably.
If you have kids and you maybe have let it go to Elsa's voice, that's also Kristen Bell. So in terms of her and her husband, Dax, both being Michigan people, Kristen grew up, I think, across the town from me. People are very excited about them.
She's great.
Which is great, right?
I gotta say, I had kids. I mean, Frozen came out before I had before we had our first kid. I shouldn't say before I had, because I had nothing to do with that. My wife baked that bread, but
my wife.
But I'd heard friends of mine that had kids talk about Frozen and everything. I was like, and then once I actually had a kid, and I think around 2 or 3 was when something about the movie just clicked, and I didn't even know Kristen Bell was one of the main voices of the movie. And then after seeing the movie for the 1000th time and running, now that I have a 3-year-old that is also in love with Frozen,
right?
I gotta say, I was impressed, not only to find out that Kristen Bell was the voice of one of the main characters, but
she sings.
Yeah,
for sure. She's
great,
Anna,
dude.
right? She's Anna.
It's not, and it's not like the old Disney movies where like one actor does the dialogue and then they bring in like a professional singer to do all the songs. So there's a disconnect there. It's like, well, why does the voice sound different all of a sudden? I mean, she's great, and
she doesn't play in Anberlin. She's not playing at We Were Young Fest. So how great could she be? That's what I'm saying, right?
She's not that lucky. She may be Anna, but she's not in Anberlin. Not Anberlin.
That's what I'm talking about.
Go to YouTube and find the video of her meeting the sloth.
It
Dag
is.
set up for her.
It's a whole.
Didn't she? I think she specifically asked to be in Zootopia because of the sloth role.
Yeah,
that checks.
And
out.
it's like she has like 1 line or 2 lines or something like that, but she's like obsessed with sloths. So like
obsessed.
She is like in Zootopia for like 1 line just because she got to play a sloth.
Yeah,
you gotta love an actor like that just is like, what, I get to do something I love, let's do it.
Right. Yeah, one day we'll be there. And then of course we can't get through many 90s 2000 movies without having some kind of parental trauma, which of course Shooter McGavin himself, Eric's dad, Christopher McDonald, with a bodacious spray tan. Like the guy,
it's beautiful.
The guy was bronzer. I mean, this is a Florida. Maybe this is a Florida thing, right? I mean, he looked like it was. They were supposed to be in Ohio, but he looked.
That's a
South Miami. Yeah.
Well, he spends his winters in Florida, you would assume.
Sure. Yeah. Well, whatever they did,
probably lives at the Villages now.
They shellacked him, and that.
He definitely has a house in Clearwater Beach. I don't doubt it.
Sure.
We got a lot of Ohio license plates down here throughout the year. So.
Yeah, those snowbirds. I know they come in droves. Yeah. Cameos. This movie,
dude.
This movie is stacked. I mean, let's get into this cameo list because they did it. They did.
Seth Rogen plays 3 characters. Admiral Seesholtz, an alien, an unnamed alien, and a character named Roach. Danny Trejo appears as the chief. Jolo Truglio as the jail guard. Love that dude. Kevin Smith as guy at gas station. Jason Mewes as guy at gas station number 2. William Shatner as himself, because he's a ham, of course. Danny McBride as the head of security, who's uncredited.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Will Forte.
Was this before or after Foot Fist Way? Was he still like really like indie unknown at this point? Because me watching it now, when Danny McBride popped up, I'm like, well, of course. here's Dan McBride. But I think if I saw this in 2009, I'd be like, I don't know who that guy is.
Well, for the public, Pineapple Express had come out the year before. Who knows when they shot this? Because there was a bunch of reshoots and shit like that. So
you just made me feel so old that Pineapple Express was 2008.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my
and then
gosh.
Eastbound
I'm thinking
Down
it came out like 2015 or something.
No, man. I know this is a nice moment for us all to realize that time has certainly moved on. And then Eastbound and Down, which was still like the opening.
Okay, so Danny McBride was Danny McBride at this point.
Yeah. So, but again, like based on what we're going to learn about the production of this movie, almost at this point, it's like you don't know what, like they filmed it, they showed it, they reshot it.
Yeah.
So this very well could have been McBride showed up for 2 days and was like, "Oh, I don't need to be credited for that. That's fine." And then would later find out after his career's taken off that, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do that movie you stopped in." I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or got
paid him like $500 and hit craft services.
I'm good, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Will Forte as THX security guard number 4. Craig Robinson as THX security guard number 5. Love Craig Robinson. Here come the Star Wars cameos. Ray Park as THX security guard number 2. Peter Mayhew as himself, uncredited. Deleted scene? I don't know. I missed that.
I didn't see that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you look on IMDb, there's a whole separate IMDb for the deleted scenes. So I don't know. There's probably a DVD out there somewhere that is just like there's probably like a double DVD out there that's the movie and then just all the deleted scenes. Because as we'll get into, this movie has a very interesting history.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like there was a lot of content shot for the movie that didn't get into the final cut.
at the company Christmas party. We're hearing in the patron chat right now. That's company Christmas party.
No, I think she's literally just saying she can't watch right now.
Oh, she's at
her company Christmas party.
Right.
The patrons always fill us in on what's up.
Just quit.
What I love.
Who needs a job?
Yeah,
is it an open bar? Is it worth it?
I don't know.
If it's not an open bar, then leave.
Yeah, get out of there.
True.
All right, Billy D. Williams as Judge Reinhold. That's the character's name. He doesn't play Judge Reinhold. Carrie Fisher, what's up, Mom? As the Doctor, and those are the big ones. Yeah, obviously Carrie Fisher was the huge one. Great to see her.
Ethan Suplee as the chat forum. If you watch My Name Is Earl.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
So when he basically
or Mallrats,
yes. Or there was a movie Butterfly Effect with
Butterfly Effect, Evolution. Right. He's been in a ton of stuff.
He's been in a ton of stuff for sure.
He's a great
that guy.
He's a guy. He's a great guy. I mean, everything he does, any role you put him in, he's always good at that role.
He's really good at being creepy.
One I will say is one as an Office fan, one thing it's not really a cameo because it's a character story. David Denman, who was Roy in The Office, is
true.
He plays Eric's older brother, or I guess younger. Is he supposed to be his younger or older brother?
Older brother.
I didn't really. I'm assuming older because he's bigger, but the dad was going to give Eric the business, so I didn't know if there was like a hierarchy thing there. But either way, he plays Eric's brother. So when he popped up, just immediately, like, he's always great in things that he does. So.
Right. Surprised he wasn't coming.
He's another great that guy.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was coming from Poor Richards. So I think that was pretty much it.
That jet ski.
That's it. Was there anything else that we missed, or like would be fun to actually go back and like actually watch it, not for the plot? Like I thought the two guys coming in to buy it, ask if it was a Star, like did they have Star Trek or whatever, and he's like, this isn't a Star Trek comic book store. Like I thought those guys were going to be someone, and they weren't. At least to my eye. So
well, you could almost count this as a cameo, not for real, but former Devo frontman. Or maybe current. I don't know. Devo's still active, right?
Devo is still active.
I think they're doing some final touring. They're still Nick actually. Well, Nick was just at the Darker Waves festival, and I think Devo played at the exact same time as the Cardigans. And I even texted Nick specifically, and I was like, what twisted person puts Devo and the Cardigans on at the same time? Like who does this? You know,
someone who's not paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, Mark Mothersbaugh, the frontman of Dio, scored the film. He went on to do 21 Jump Street, Thor Ragnarok, the Royal Tenenbaums.
Dude
a
is
ton of stuff.
Dude is stacked as a composer for film. It's arguably, I mean, it's one of those people like that kind of goes under the radar. But when you look at his career of being a musician, like he is probably one of the most underrated creatives in the last since 1960. For sure.
I mean, it's a different level, but it's it's odd that he and Danny Elfman both came from these like seminal kind of like 80s bands.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they went on to score some very iconic stuff. I mean, obviously I think Danny Elfman's is probably on another level, but
right.
Mothersbaugh, you've heard so much from Mothersbaugh in the term of scores that you don't even know.
Right.
There's one I'm thinking of. I'm gonna have to pull up IMDb probably, but there's something specific that Mothersbaugh did in the cartoon world. I don't think it's SpongeBob, but he did something very like holy crap. The dude from Devo scored this entire show. Like it's just
it was things. Well, he's done I think he's, let's see, the B-52s did Rocko's Modern Life, but like he did a bunch of stuff for Nickelodeon, and then he's done a ton of things that you would normally be like, I guess I don't recall some of the score, but I remember it had great music, and then you're like, oh, Mark Mothersbaugh. Which is amazing.
Well,
the reception of this movie,
here's
according to the internet, we're getting into it. So, we sound like we're fawning over this movie. Like we're
right. So huge cast.
We are not.
I mean, huge from, in hindsight, right? But still, big cameos. I mean, like a movie that is made for a large segment of the population, even though a lot of studio heads might think at the time it's just for, this little sliver of the public in the nerd fandom. Nonetheless, they put a lot into it in terms of like getting people on board. Let's look at the stats. IMDb 6.5, Metacritic 45. That's out of 100. Rotten Tomatoes 32%.
But what about that fan score, Adam?
57.
Not much better.
Not killing it. Nah. Here's something really interesting to me. The original budget, apparently, there's conflicting numbers, but I think I've made sense of it. $3.9 million. $3.9 million. That's like pocket change for Hollywood. That's nothing at all.
When Hollywood used to make comedies, though.
Right. Well, I'm going to put it into perspective here. Apparently, that in the end went up to $8 million because there were some reshoots. Apparently, twice the cost altogether to go reshoot whatever percentage they reshot. To put this in context, other movies' budgets around the same time. Benchwarmers. You know the movie Benchwarmers with damn Napoleon Dynamite and
John Heder.
Yeah, and David Spade
Nick Schwartzman?
and Schwartzman.
Nick Schwartzman?
Yeah. And it's not a good movie. It's a silly ass comedy. $33 million they spent on that movie. Superbad, 2007, $20 million. Knocked Up in 2007 as well, $30 million there. Pineapple Express, $27 million. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, $30 million. So like classics minus
and I was gonna say 4 out of the 5 of those are actually revisitable classics for sure.
Which is interesting because at this point too, we have to also look at like the idea of where most of these actors were, right? Like at this point, I think Kristen Bell was probably the biggest name for Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Like this was like Russell Brand's like real first like introduction to a lot of whatever he would end up, what chaos he would go to. So, but and then from there you have like Mila Kunis, who is in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. So like you're kind of looking at this film specifically, Fanboys, is like there wasn't really many big hitters that were, it's like you look at the original actor who plays Hutch, right? Was kind of like the poor man's version of like if Jack Black's not available. You know what I mean? And at that point you had a lot of like those physical, like generally like, you know, stout dude is fully aware that he's not, you know, Chris Hemsworth physique, and he like kind of leans into it. Like we've seen that trope, you know, he's almost like the Farley-esque comedy of like being completely over the top and being unafraid of exactly. So I think
actor.
Right. But what's interesting about this is that like we're looking at the story of it. So many of these other movies, the audience was so much wider versus the idea that you have to be a Star Wars fan to enjoy it. Versus if you're watching Forgetting Sarah Marshall, we've all been in breakups. We can relate to that. Pineapple Express. If you smoked weed or knew someone who smoked weed, you probably could watch the movie, right? Knocked Up, same thing. We've all, if anyone's ever been in a situation where you're like, what if I would have had a kid when I wasn't expecting it? Superbad, we're three men talking about Star Wars on a podcast. We also were in high school at one point. That's a huge population right there. So like, this movie was like, was it too nuanced? Like, what was it?
Here's my counter argument to that. Superbad, Deon and I were touring, but by this point, so tell me if you had the same kind of thing. I didn't see the trailer for Superbad, YouTube era yet, where everything was on YouTube or online. So I just heard that a movie called Superbad was good, and I had no clue what it was about, but I saw it anyway. Knocked Up, same thing. Pineapple Express, I definitely didn't smoke weed, but I liked the actors in it, so I saw it. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, didn't know what it was about, didn't see it until years later, still watched it. And none of those premises really like would reel me in. I mean, to be fair, either did Fanboys. I didn't see it.
Sure.
But I feel like even if you aren't into Star Wars, this was in the wake of the biggest sequel event of all time, stretched over, like 9 years. So it had gone full mainstream again. And then even if you weren't into Star Wars, I could imagine someone seeing the trailer and saying, "Oh, I'll go laugh at those dorks. Cool. This looks funny with these actors."
I mean, at the heart of it is basically a heist movie with some
exactly.
It's a road trip heist movie. Because
sure.
if you look at really even before that, you had literally the movie Road Trip, that came out, and then you had Euro Trip, which was a terrible semi sequel to that movie from the same makers. So it's kind of like a road trip heist movie. Ocean's 11 on wheels. Not quite as classy, but
But at a time where like Hollywood was making comedies at this point. Because if you look at these other movies at the same time, right? Superbad comes out in 2007. Knocked Up also in the same year, 2007. Pineapple Express, 2008. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, also 2008, right? So like and then when would 40-Year-Old Virgin come out? That was around the same time too, right?
Probably right in there.
Yeah, and
06
then
maybe.
And then you've got This Is the End.
I want to say maybe 2006, 2007.
Yeah. So you've got this like kind of gold, like this is the Apatow era, right? This is the end of Will Ferrell. This is the transition out of old school. This is where movies are still, you're at this point, like Adam, you said, like, I like the actors, right? Because that if it's a comedy, I think people used to be like, it didn't have to take much to go laugh with my friends. It was still a cinematic experience, right? So I think this was trying to fit in there. What's interesting about it too, is that I'm curious to know how many people, because let's also look at like where pop culture was at the time too, right? Spider-Man was still super corny, but we liked it because it was well done, right? Sam Raimi's trilogy was, but you know what I mean? Like arguably, like Spider-Man 2.
I would say the comfortability that we enjoy as what would previously be considered as nerds when we were younger.
Yeah.
The comfortability that we enjoy now, the door was opening to that in the early 2000s.
Agreed.
So because of movies like X-Men and Spider-Man being,
which were still like they were still and they were still campy in their own way. Like
they were campy. I mean, but
100%.
I mean, with Sam Raimi, that's to be expected. But me as a Sam Raimi fan, I'm like, this is a great Sam Raimi movie. But I had a lot of problems with it as a Spider-Man fan. But
sure.
That's my nerd light just shining down on me right now.
Well, I think what's interesting, like on that point though, because Deon, you're bringing up a good point. Is like is the movies that started to take the superhero genre that were kind of now starting to roll out the red carpet for people to come into what normally was like, I'm not going to see a comic book movie. Like I'm a jock. Like hell no, I'm not going to see Spider-Man. Was Iron Man.
I'm not going to see Transformers or toys.
Exactly. But like Iron Man came out in 2008.
Yep.
And Batman Begins came out in 2005. And then The Dark Knight, arguably the greatest comic book movie of all time, came out in 2008. So like this is all like, but at the same time, 2005 was Revenge of the Sith after two movies that are arguably, certainly by audience rating, by critical rating, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones are at the lowest. They're at the bottom consistently.
Yeah, I think Attack of the Clones is the lowest rated Star Wars film out of the 9 films. If I remember correctly.
Tracks. So we're kind of in. If you're looking at the fact that like there wasn't really that much time, the idea of people going, it's a road trip to go see the Phantom Menace. Like I'm wondering how many people of our timeline were just like, that doesn't sound that compelling, because I was literally the kid who watched it in the theater, and I thought it was fine, but then everyone was mad about it. So it's like, I wonder if that almost like kind of kicked it back.
Well,
it's interesting.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves because this is like really relevant stuff to this later discussion. But I mean, you guys are completely right, and I would say if this movie was made right now from scratch, it would kill. I think
I agree, because I think it was too close to like if you really put it in perspective of Revenge of the Sith came out 4 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
It's too close. It's there's like the so what.
There was no nostalgia
yet. There it's like the so what. We're still in the middle of these prequel trilogies basically. Like we just got them. So yeah, I agree.
Well, let's talk about the box office. There are reasons for this beyond the quality of the movie or the timing that we'll talk about shortly. Box office revenue, U.S. domestic opening weekend. Have you guys read the notes yet?
I'm looking at them right now. I'm just waiting for you to say it because it's painful.
It's brutal. Ooh. Opening weekend, $171,000. Gross, U.S. gross, $688,000. Not even $1 million. International gross was $272,000, giving you a worldwide total of $961,000. Less than $1 million. Opening weekend in Australia. Mike, did you already read this number? Both of you guys already read this number? Don't read it if you haven't.
I can't believe that. I would have assumed that like they would have sent the number over and then someone would have been like, sir,
are you missing a zero?
Yeah, right. Like, or something being like,
this
doesn't even fit the currency conversion. Like, what is this?
Opening weekend in Australia, $2,100. $2,109.
Hey.
They did make up some of it ultimately. They almost broke even with the domestic video sales. 5.3 million domestic. So
where were we seeing this? Were we going to Blockbuster still? How do we see this?
Yeah, at that point, Blockbuster was still happening. Redbox was happening by then.
Netflix was still sending DVDs.
Yeah. Send me this thing with the Superbad dudes about Star Wars. 90 minutes. I'll watch that. Sick. Yep. All right. Let's get into some of the stuff that didn't age well, and then we'll bring it back around and try to redeem this movie in some way by talking about someone even worse, maybe the worst person that we can think of in Hollywood. To put this stuff in context. So a few things that have aged really poorly. If you've watched this movie recently, or if you remember, I mean, like this was like just a thing of the time. But notably, it wasn't in all the Judd Apatow movies. Those movies were much more mature in this sense. The homophobia wasn't so much a thing there, but in this movie, it's like it's really bad, and it's a lot. The homophobia, the insecure, toxic masculinity bullshit. Using gay as just like a miscellaneous derogatory term. Using
like
actual
that's like everything is offensive if it leads back to that. You're like,
actual homophobic slurs, like ones that will not be repeated here.
And we've talked about that in even movies that are beloved for comedy, like Superbad. Like you go back and rewatch Superbad, and you're like, "Yo, what happened to us?
Lost Deon.
Deon dropped out. Lost all audio. Working on. Just tell him to come back." Even when we're watching Superbad, I'm like, "Man, dude, this movie it's rough. The script is rough, and I know that's how the dudes.
But it's a fraction of this, though.
I agree,
like,
and everything
came back.
Sliver. Right, and it's interesting. I think, like in some ways, for as critical as we are about our society constantly, at least here in America, I'm in some ways like I kind of like I don't want to say I'm patting ourselves on the back, but I'm like we've made, in my opinion, like some progress. I'm not going to say decent progress because that's not my I'm not in that community enough to be able to say that there is any progress, but like certainly from my outside perspective, it is like we have removed a lot of that stuff out of what I think is an acceptable lexicon for most conversations among people who are, to
people who are not pieces of shit.
Well, yeah, well, that's a good way to put it, Adam. This is your podcast, but I think it is crazy, like just seeing, just this was the best script we could put out.
Yeah.
Well, Han Solo was a bitch. What? Like you're like, okay,
he's not
like,
a bitch.
He's
Patrick
not a
Stewart's
bitch.
gay.
Yeah,
Listen
right.
to his accent.
You're like, oh my, okay, cool.
It was rough, dude. Deon texted me mid viewing, and we're like, a lot of homophobia going on here. Forgot about this.
Yeah.
First of all, can I do a quick check real quick? Can you guys hear me?
You're good.
There you are. Gotcha.
I lost all audio and everything for a second there. I don't know if it glitched or whatever.
The world
when I beer run.
It was space.
World Between Worlds. I brought Ahsoka back. She's going to help us with some stuff here in the future. We're going to right all these wrongs. It's fine. So
stay fanboys.
Yeah, it's a thing like growing up in the 90s. The various like you're gay and emasculation jokes were definitely common, and I mean I would say even up until the like early 2000s when around the time this movie was probably being worked on, written, shot, whatever.
Right.
It doesn't age well. I will agree with that. Even if it is good natured between friends, whatever, I mean. You straddle a fine line in comedy. I think I've got some friends who are stand-up comics, and I'm like, is it rough to be a comic today? Because it seems like everything is off limits. But I think that these kinds of taunts, people kind of realize, like, what, it's like, if I'm saying the same thing as this other person and they're saying it in such a hateful way, I don't think this is something that I can continue saying or that I should continue saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I think there was like a whole South Park episode about this, just like, but for me, growing up in a small town in the South, as much as Florida can be the South at times, it's a world unto its own, as we all know. We've all been here.
America's appendage, yeah.
Yeah. Appendage is a kind word. It's for me, as I mentioned earlier, growing up listening to punk rock, skateboarding, wearing different clothes from everybody that I went to school with. Forgive me if anybody's offended, but being called faggot on a regular basis was not something I enjoyed when I was a teenager and in middle school. And so these weren't jokes that I was ever wanting to use or comfortable with using, because I had seen the hateful side of when it stops being a joke and when it becomes a threat, I guess, if that makes sense.
For sure.
I remember me and my best friend Scott were walking down a road between our houses. We lived very close to each other, and this car drives by and just yells that word. I don't want to use it twice in the same stream, but and he yells back, F you, and like and they like slammed on the brakes and chased us down.
Oh my God.
And years later, and we knew the neighborhood, so we like ducked in like behind someone's, like we like hopped a fence and like ran and like hid, and we were fine. But then you get in the scope of the time frame, you had stuff happening like with Matthew Shepard, another an actual homosexual kid who is growing up in a small town, and these types of things are literally life ending. So these types of things don't age well to me. They're jokes that I'm just like, they're just not fun anymore. Like
it was stupid then and it's stupider now.
Yeah, it's that. So that was kind of the rough part of. And you know what? In all honesty, I mean, when you go down the list of the movies that came around the same time, there's a lot of these jokes in Superbad and Knocked Up and things like that. 40-Year-Old Virgin, which I actually did look up, came out in 2005, by the way. Holy crap! Even older than these movies. There's the whole like, I know you're gay jokes. Things that don't age well. But it's just. There's just, you kind of get barrage time in this movie. And I think I remember going to comic book stores and being in these conversations, and that was unfortunately the way that a lot of comic book nerds and movie nerds talk to each other.
Yeah, so I mean, it is like representative of the time for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's period appropriate, but that doesn't make it any less comfortable or any more comfortable. It doesn't make it any more like enjoyable now as I'm watching it, 2023 versus 2009 versus 98. It's like.
And it wasn't like it wasn't like written to be like a Mel Brooks movie. You know what I mean? Like it was like you're supposed to feel really good about this, and like that's why I think it's really goofy. But it
was pretty hateful in this movie, in my opinion. I mean, they were meant to be stabbing insults and not just like whatever,
which is so weird to have those like moments in a movie that's supposed to make you like feel good about a friend and four friends going on this journey.
Exactly.
But I have a friend who, the thing that, she talks about is like that the interesting reflection about some of these like small nerd communities. When I say small, I mean like basically every large fandom, is that a lot of people who get ostracized out of a normal life end up taking a lot of that same hierarchical structure and bring it into their own fandoms, where you have we know that toxic Star Wars fans exist. We know that toxic Star Trek fans exist. So it's almost like it's kind of is this a reflection of that? Is this a reflection of, oh wow, you have a Star Wars t-shirt on, name every Jedi's lightsaber, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Yeah, right. 100%. So it's I think we've got this point to understand that, if we wanted to redo Fanboys, there's a lot of this stuff that you can truly drop out or rewrite in a much smarter way that would not be that difficult.
Yeah,
I think a lot of times when it comes to comedy, it is such a fine line of the making a good joke versus making the easy joke, if that makes sense.
Sure.
The lazy joke.
Yeah, just the oh yeah, well Han Solo's a bitch. It's like yeah, that doesn't really land anymore. That didn't really
So
land then. Didn't
a
really land
bitch,
now.
like,
Right.
what
It's
do you
like
mean by a bitch? Like he's
yeah,
acting like a female, and in your opinion, that's bad in some way?
or are you a 9-year-old like no, I meant like a female dog. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
You're an idiot.
yeah.
I'll kick you off a cliff.
right.
All right. Moving on. A few more things that haven't aged well, and then let's actually tell a story here. There's also a depiction of Ain't Cool News, the website founder Harry Knowles, who has since been accused of sexual harassment and assault. Not a good guy. He was responsible for getting this movie a lot of buzz, and was promised that he could have a cameo in it. I don't remember when that went down, the allegations. So I don't know if that was the reason that he was portrayed by someone else. Nonetheless, not like the way
Not
they
a dude
talk
to
about
be
him,
celebrated.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're a legend now. And just generally also the Star Trek versus the Star Trek Trekkie hate and that kind of like it's not banter. It's like straight up hate between the two fandoms. Hasn't aged well, in my opinion. I don't feel it to be the same way anymore. I mean, some people still, are diehard one way or the other, but I think, like we've talked about a little bit, nerd culture has gone so mainstream that I think a lot of that has dissipated, and comic book
This was
conventions,
actually a
Comic Cons
specific
have brought us
question.
together.
Yeah, that was I was gonna say this is a specific question I want to ask you guys who have been to multiple, Comic Cons or just conventions in general. Have you I was gonna ask, have you felt that there's any like if you're walking by like someone in a Star Trek outfit and you're wearing a Star Wars outfit, is there like a West Side Story moment, or is it just like a hey, what's up, bro? You know? It seemed a little extreme to me, and for a movie, sure. Like, I mean, they are the two sci-fi,
Juggernauts. Right.
the juggernauts for
They're Metallica
sure.
and Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, but
Metallica and Megadeth.
I dated a girl in high school whose parents were Trekkies. They went on like Star Trek cruises and stuff, and
Sick.
like I don't remember them ever being like, yeah, when we see Star Wars people, we just gotta, we gotta come out, we gotta come correct. It's like,
I mean, there was that vibe was very real, and I remember, despite having grown up on Star Trek and loving Star Trek, denying that in the early 2000s when the prequels came out, and I went, I was fully re-engaged as a fan. I didn't like lie about it and deny it, but I was like, no, it's Star Wars 100% for me. You know what I mean? I just kind of almost just kind of left that out of the story in a way for myself.
Well, I can certainly say that as someone who has never seen a Star Trek anything besides the memes, which are amazing. But the only Star Trek thing I've actually watched from beginning to end was the movie with Chris Pine, which is J.J. Abrams's 2007 when that came out. So that's my only interaction.
2009.
2009. Okay.
Same year as us. Yeah.
So that's my only interaction with Star Trek. I think for my side of things, I know that's the commonality. That's the joke between anyone who is dressed up. There is, of course, we're going to have those. It's almost like an introductory joke. What I don't love is like when people, when they very easily, because like you have a lot of people in this community that are they're awkward people. There's no denying that. We know plenty of them. When they do, like I saw like a whole crew do like Star Trek on the Halcyon, right? And I'm kind of like, all right, like I get it, like I am the main character, look at me, blah blah blah. I don't love stuff like that, but I certainly, if you're at a hotel bar over a convention, a bunch of Star Trek people walk in, you absolutely should make a joke like, looks like this bar is only big for one fandom, and it ain't, and we're already at it. Make all those jokes. I think everyone that I've met has been in great spirits of that. I've never seen it like get I've never seen it get that bad, but I also know that there's plenty of toxic fans in both communities. So I fully can believe it's existed. That
I kind of had an idea. So we're gonna make a sequel to this movie, but it's just gonna be Star Wars fans versus Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have your OT fans, you're gonna have your prequel fans, you're gonna have your sequel fans, and you're just gonna have your fans that just like everything and just along for the ride. 100%. And they're just gonna all hate each other.
If it was made now, that is
you wouldn't even need Star Trek. You wouldn't even need Star Trek development. You'd be like, son, what are you watching? You know they're an original trilogy household.
I watch Star Wars Theory every day.
Yeah. So the vibe and depiction of the Star Wars fandom is interesting. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, let's tell the story of maybe part of why this movie didn't do well, or part of why maybe we I don't know. I personally didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was a good movie. Here's the story. This was released by the Weinstein Company. That was the production company that funded and released this movie. Harvey Weinstein, maybe the biggest piece of shit I can think of off the top of my head. He's a terrible person. He's a monster.
He's orange. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, maybe they should move to like the moon together and just stay there with no masks. So this movie started filming in early 2006. Early screenings were overwhelmingly positive, apparently, including a screening at Celebration Europe in the summer of 2007 that got a 4-minute standing ovation. People loved it, apparently. Early cut. So Weinstein was stoked, and he wanted to make sure it would test well for the general public as well as the Star Wars fans. So he did apparently one single test screening. It's bizarre to me. Sample of one. At a mall in New Jersey, where it actually scored 86 out of 100. Pretty damn good. He was pretty stoked.
Okay, now mind you, if you've ever done a screen, have you guys ever gone to like a marketing screening before?
Yeah.
Like there is an inherited built-in like, hey, you get to watch a movie for free. Here's some popcorn. Did you like the movie? Like there's certainly a bias that gets built into that.
Yeah.
And they know that because like they can use all of this as a marketing pitch. You know, watch the audience react to this amazing movie. You know what I mean? They do this. But anyways, it's still it's a high score, right? Like it's a high score.
Yeah. So he seemed to love it at first, supposedly told the director at the screening, I haven't had an experience like that in a movie in a long time. We're putting this on 2,000 screens. We're going wide. You guys knocked it out of the park. Super pumped. But that apparently wasn't good enough for him, citing test screenings of a couple other movies released by the Weinstein Company at the time. Arthur, an animated movie that I don't remember at all. Arthur and the Invisibles. You guys remember this?
Nope.
And a movie called Janky Promoters, which starred Ice Cube and Omar Epps. Okay. Also don't remember that at all. Both of those movies scored in the 90s for their test screenings. So Weinstein
makes sense that we would not remember them.
So Weinstein ordered a bunch of changes and reshoots. He's like, we got to get these numbers up. We got to get it to test like Janky Promoters and Arthur and the Invisibles. This guy's an
the Janky Promoters even go to theaters? I feel like that was like that's like a TA Travel Center truck stop find.
Dude, I didn't even
in the dollar DVD bin. Yeah.
I didn't even recognize the cover. I mean, love Ice Cube, but I have no memory of this movie. So Weinstein ordered a bunch of changes and reshoots. The cancer subplot was a big point. He wanted that to be as removed as possible, right? I think he wanted it out entirely, but the reshoots and everything ended up ending abruptly, which we'll get to. So it's still there, but it's so little that when I was watching it, I was like, is this the worst screenplay of all time? They just like mention this. They just throw it in there, and then it's at the end. Like, what? Like, well, come on, man, he's dying. Like, what?
Carrie Fisher like helps him not die for like another.
There was definitely that feeling when I was watching it where it was like that. You know, when they first mentioned it, you're like, okay, this is how we're reeling the best friend back in, right?
Right.
And then it just kind of falls by the wayside. There's no like discussions of, like there could have just been one line of like,
I'm too sick for this.
Or like like, you haven't even been around enough to know that I got cancer, bud. Like
Yeah,
it's like,
there's like no setup
stuff
for
like
it.
that.
Yeah.
Like because there were those moments of like bro, you after high school you just moved on, and it seems like he's more upset about the fact they didn't become comic book illustrators than the fact that his best friend wasn't around when he got a cancer diagnosis.
Yes.
Right.
Because it was so spotty that they were using all these different cuts of the movie to piece together the final cut. It's
and
like
Eric doesn't even talk to him about the fact that he has cancer at all, right? They don't ever discuss it.
Do they even say what type of cancer it is? Even like it's so nondescript. Like it's just like, yeah, you probably got cancer. You should probably try and steal a Star Wars film.
I've got.
It's like when he asked him to come outside at the party or whatever, or come outside from the garage or whatever, and he's like, "I need to talk to you." I thought they were gonna talk about the cancer part, and I thought the friends were withholding it from the main character, from Eric, and he didn't know, and I thought it was about to get exposed. I was like, oh, that's a twist, Nice. But it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. He survived melanoma for a couple of years, and then it finally got him.
Right.
Okay.
So
this tracks. This makes sense.
So all but removed. Apparently, Weinstein said something like, "Cancer's too serious for a fun movie. It's too dark." And apparently the director Kyle Newman and Harvey Weinstein just butted heads throughout the whole thing, all the reshoots and changes. He was super bummed because the fans loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Newman actually said that the studio pitched something like, quote, "Why don't we get Rogan back in, come back for some reshoots, get him in a fat suit as a woman and let him wrestle Fogler and Baruchel in Jell-O for car parts." And he apparently at one point they also wanted Harry Potter references in the movies, and Kyle Newman at this point put his foot down and was like, "Dude, Harry Potter didn't even exist in '98, so no, that's stupid. It's not happening." And
what it reminds?
Just went super south from there.
It reminds me of the documentary about the Nicolas Cage Superman film that never got made, which Kevin Smith was actually a part of,
right?
For a moment. There's a producer in the documentary at one point that is like, you know what? I don't really like that he's got a cape.
Oh,
and it's just like you're like, how out of touch are these people that these are the purse strings holders that, and the guy is saying, you know what? I don't like that Superman has a cape. It's like. Superman is the cape.
Bro, do you even Superman?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, these like I texted Adam after he sent me a YouTube video just talking about the drama around this movie, and I texted him after. I'm like, it's pretty amazing when you've got so much money that you can just be like, you know what, we're just going to take a $3 million bath on this because we can't see eye to eye on something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like. Are you kidding me?
So they brought in directors. Once Newman started to put his foot down, they started bringing in directors and scheduling reshoots behind his back, including while the dude was on his honeymoon.
Oof.
They brought in Steve Brill, who did Heavyweights, Little Nicky, Mr. Deeds, like a ton of Adam Sandler stuff. He's been a producer and a director on a lot of it. Brought him in for some reshoots, and apparently he rubbed some people the wrong way, coming in with like a, "Hey guys, I'm here to save your movie" kind of vibe. So at this point, people are displeased enough, and it's been going on long enough that word of the reshoot starts to get out, and the Star Wars fandom apparently lost their shit and started sending hate mail to Steve Brill and the Weinstein Company. Apparently over 300,000 emails sent to the Weinstein Company. Like, this is somebody running like an early internet bot at this point. Nonetheless, they just got completely bombarded and sent one to Steve Brill that said, quote, "You suck for recutting Fanboys. You suck. You truly suck." Something like that. So Steve Brill responded, dude, don't read the comments. First lesson. Responded, quote,
pre-internet days.
Rookie move.
"You suck for mailing me your bullshit whining. You're going to like Fanboys better because of me, and then you can kiss my ass." And then that hit the news, of course. And there was also a MySpace campaign to stop the recut and reshoots called Stop Darth Weinstein from Ruining Fanboys, calling for boycotts of other Weinstein films. It just like, it completely blew up in their face.
So that's why we didn't get Kill Bill Volume 3. I knew it!
So screenings started going out of the reshot and recut version. They didn't test any better. So Weinstein at this point, with all the hate mail and everything, just said, F it. Let the nerds win. Apparently that's the quote. Gave Kyle Newman 3 days to re-edit with the new footage they had. Had to keep in certain new stuff. You know, they completely reshot like the interrogation scene and all that stuff, so had to leave some of it. Had 3 days. And then Weinstein proceeds to release the movie, not in the 2000 screens that he originally told Newman that he would, but, ready for this? 44 theaters in the United States total. So there's your opening weekend. Like,
Yeah.
there it is. Not again, it's not a good movie, in my opinion, but if it would have at least been one theater in every state, that would have helped. 44.
There are over 100 movie theaters in LA alone.
Yeah.
Just, you know what I mean? I'm like, man, talk about like,
Dude. Oh,
like
brutal.
And that's probably like Harvey Weinstein at his best. That's what a shitbag that guy is.
Yeah.
I think the term for that is called starving the beast. It's when you intentionally cause something to fail and then you point to it and say, "See, I was right.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to work."
The Spider-Man meme.
He threw out something apparently also that was like, well, if the Star Wars fans really love it, you know, they'll find it. They'll rally and they'll find it and they'll support it.
Even though it's not even in their state or the surrounding states.
Yeah.
Sure.
If they want to fly all the way to New York City or LA to see this movie, they will.
Yeah, I wonder how many states it was actually in. Like, because you'd have to assume between New York, Chicago, and LA, San Francisco maybe, that's half of those theaters,
Probably.
at least, that they would have put them in.
Right. And however many have, at the time contracts with
Right.
AMC and, all of these other ones had contracts with some of these companies that they had to show Weinstein films, Miramax films, whatever. So,
I mean, I say there's a good chance that it wasn't even in some fans' states, period.
Yeah, for sure.
Or
oh my gosh,
even like within driving distance for sure.
Oh, if you're in Indiana,
Omaha, Nebraska,
if you're in Nebraska, if you're in the Dakotas, like, buddy, you ain't seeing that movie.
Nope. Yeah, Missouri, for that matter. Like,
where's that? I don't even know if that's the
Arkansas.
State. Arkansas? Yeah. Never heard of it.
Nope. Let's really quick kind of just say a few more things about the Star Wars fandom at the time versus the time it was released versus now, because this movie was something that Ernie Klein started writing in '97, leading up to this release, because apparently I think it was his mom had cancer, and he started thinking about, well, if I had cancer,
I might not be able to see this movie. Yeah.
So he starts writing the script, and it took him years to write. The fandom at that time, and this is like, this helps me kind of like forgive how one-dimensional the fan base is portrayed, because it really kind of was like this at the time. You have that like that super gatekeeper shit like we were talking about earlier, where fans, people who were nerds want to have their cliques. It's just human nature. It's very tribal. That whole, well, if you're a real fan, then tell me XYZ. Some deep cut detail, the kind of thing that you only like get so deep with when you have a really limited amount of content. There was only the original trilogy at this point. Mm-hmm. You've got toys, you've got a handful of video games, and a bunch of expanded universe books and comics.
Right.
So unless you're like an ultra nerd, it's the toys and the movies. So it's all the details that like my dudes like you and other prop and armor builders obsess over for the sake of the props and the armor. But back in the day, it was like, that's all you had was to go in super deep and figure out, oh, Boba Fett's helmet's flipped. The image must be flipped on that one. Oh, let me read about that. It was deep, deep, deep stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of the fandoms were existing on message boards. Like it was the relaying of information. I mean, dude, like posting findings of something and then going like at the time, like there were still a ton of people who did not have high-speed internet still. Like the idea of going to a chat board, a message board, like they're literally talking about in the movie, like that was like a site like Bleeding Cool or any of these other sites that were basically like leakers. Like there really wasn't a highly accessible thing like that interconnected us like Facebook until 2005. So like if you were getting details of leaks about certain information, was either an official leak, or it was, someone who worked on the set and then had to work behind an alias or something. It's like people were coming and looking for this stuff. And I think too, like there's also a side of where Hollywood still to this day has tropes that they've leaned on for decades, right? Like the fact that, it's like, we don't know what to do with Kristen Bell's character. And what's his name? Who's the Hutch?
Yeah.
Just blatantly being like, lift up your shirt, lift up your shirt. I'm just like, Jesus. This is obnoxious. Brutal. And then she goes over and that's like she sees herself as like, that's her value. Right. And then him, and then, Windows being like, but you're not like a real girl. Like, stuff as if like, oh, it's crazy to me that like a woman would actually like watch the movie and pay attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these tropes have existed in Hollywood for so long. And I think like this one almost just because I think we're a little bit more sensitive to it, of course, after years and years of kind of pulling back the curtain on some of this stuff. But it just really it's in some of this stuff, it just hasn't aged. It just has not aged in that sense of going like this isn't even that creative. It's literally almost comical at how tropey it is,
Yeah, there's like you would
think the lift up your shirt scene definitely felt like a non-Star Wars fan writing if this guy thought that he could use the Force, he would definitely just want to see some boobs.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
It just felt very just like, oh, this is what I would do with the Force, like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Even the dialogue with that kind of stuff, the way they, the nicknames and the quotes and stuff that they throw at each other, it just seems like I had a feeling, I anticipated it feeling like kind of quaint going back there, to that era, but it didn't. It just felt dumb. Like it just felt like it felt tropey. Like all of it felt super tropey, even though Ernie Klein is like the dude when it comes to nostalgia. I mean, Ready Player One is like, the book is a masterpiece. It's like one of, it was Steven Spielberg made the damn movie. It was like one of the biggest books, most anticipated, theatrical or movie adaptations.
Yep.
But it's, I don't know. It's just, this is again a podcast where we don't like to talk shit, but it's just a lot of it's really dumb. I think I don't feel bad talking shit because I think it portrays us in an unfair way.
It makes me wonder how much of what we got is his original script versus what he had to keep in from the reshoots. And it's one of those things like, well, we spent money on it, so you got to put it in.
Yeah.
Like,
or someone reading it from the outside and being like, even like the opening scene, right? Like, they're outside, and of course, like there's a whole house party going on, but the three friends that arrive together don't talk to anybody else in the party. They're outside, and he's like, the Rocketeer has a jetpack. Boba Fett's not a bad, it's like, like, yep, for sure. Like, of course, this is like,
first of all,
all we've talked about.
Star Wars fan would not compare Boba Fett to the Rocketeer. First of all, like, come on.
Now that made me offended.
Yeah, I will say I have to say, like, that party scene. I I thought of you, Mike, when that happened, because like there was a time if you busted in as like Vader and the Stormtroopers, people would be like, eh. But now you bust into a party if you Stormtroopers precede Vader walking into a party or a bar or whatever, people are stoked. You want a costume party, you want a costume contest that wasn't even happening.
100%.
You know, at that point,
for sure.
But in '98, like that's one of the things I appreciated is there was that you hear in the background that obviously just kind of like overdub of you wore the same thing last year or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
People are just like, whatever, here come the Star Wars guys, and they're absolutely like movie correct costumes, you know. So
but then you think about when this was made. So he started writing it, you know, before the prequels. This movie was made and released starting the year after the prequels, 4 years after, almost 4 years, right? So the fandom was in a much different place. And Deon, you referenced this earlier, talking about how, you know, you watched The Phantom Menace. You had never heard the word Sith unless you read some deep lore or you had heard about Lucas's original notes or whatever. But our world, you know, the world of Star Wars, the universe of Star Wars was completely blown up. So there was so much more to learn. There was so much more. I mean, immediately I finished Revenge of the Sith and started reading a book the next day. You know, like it brought down the bar for being a nerd. It made it more accessible because it was so mainstream. I mean, it was everywhere. Like I have an entire collection of like food packaging and shit over here from Star Wars, like Burger King and
the
Skittles
Pepsi
and
cans,
and
man,
Pepsi,
getting
like
that
all of it,
golden
you know?
Yoda. Jeez, that was a summer.
I mean, it was huge, of course, in the 80s, but nothing had been like that until the prequels came out again. So it elevated the fan base and then bare minimum doubled the lore in terms of what the average fan is into. So conversations I had back then were much different. I mean, the website was like popping off, the magazine was popping off. I did an interview for, you know, because Story of the Year was, you know, right at our peak when Revenge of the Sith came out. I did an interview for the for StarWars.com, and it was cool. It wasn't like a dorky thing that my band didn't want people to see. It was like, dude, that's sick. Post it on MySpace or whatever the hell it was, you know?
It's going to my top 8.
So we were in a totally different place. And then now, post sequels, well, actually between starting the year before this movie came out, leading all the way up until all up to the Disney acquisition and then the sequels and everything, the animation popped off, and then we get a whole new trilogy, and now we're up to 11 Star Wars films, and I can't count the number of series. And it is so drastically different that, again, I can't stop talking shit, but it makes every single element of this movie seem so incredibly dated in a way, none of which is endearing. Sorry
and again, I think a lot of that just comes down to, and you know, and obviously, I mean, you don't have the foresight to know that Disney's going to purchase Star Wars, and we're going to get a whole series based on a brand new character like the Mandalorian, or you know that we're gonna by the time this movie was made, you know, Clone Wars was already happening. Like the series was already happening, right? So, you know, if you told somebody then, like, oh, one day we're gonna get a mini series about Ahsoka, you know, it's like nobody's got this foresight then. So, but I don't think you need that foresight to write a good movie about Star Wars fandom. You really don't.
That's the kicker.
Yeah. And, you know, again, I would love to see that 86% score screening that you know, that cut of the movie versus what we just viewed, you know.
Yeah. I wonder if Ernie Klein's original screenplay is out there, actually.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious in this day and age, why, I mean, there's probably some, like, you know, copyrights and all sorts of crap that's out there.
Well,
maybe he's not a big enough.
Weinstein's probably got his own issues going on right now. So I say let's start that up. Let's get the Twitter going. Let's get you know, release the
Like release the OG.
Release the cut. What's the guy's name again? Release Kevin's cut. We could do that. I mean, certainly I think like the parts that make this movie not awesome for me is beyond the tropes and beyond the fact that, like, you know, you have this endearing relationship of four friends that are connected by, we have this united love of Star Wars, but like the people along the way, and I think that's what the community feels like among here, at least for us, whether that's through emo or punk rock, or whether that's through Star Wars or whatever these other sub communities that we've built. It's that you do have that people are able to be the people that they want to be, and to see that, you know, after, gosh, however many years it's been, even since this movie came out, right? Like we have, you know, now we're 13 years, almost 13 years later after this movie came out, with so much more Star Wars stuff, like both of you guys are talking about. Think of how many fans were reignited as older fans because of The Force Awakens that have joined the 501st, that have attended their first convention, that have like signed up for a Patreon, or like started building props, or got into 3D printing, or all of that stuff. That's what makes the community be represented. It's not, you know, it's a trope to say that, you know, Star Wars and comic book people are nerds. It's literally the most profitable sets of franchises right now, between Pokemon, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Marvel. There is nothing else out there that exists like it, possibly besides pro sports. And I would say that people can't even agree on that. So it's really not like, I don't know. And pro sports and fandoms, Star Wars, it's the same thing to me, you know. Dress up in your costume, go cheer for things, and talk about it all the time. You have no effect on the final product. Collect your trinkets, do all that stuff. Like, it's the same thing, right? But I think in some regard, I think the core of how you would rewrite Fanboys to make it work is by actually sharing what makes these communities special, by highlighting the good parts and not the bad. And let's
do it. Let's rewrite.
That's our pitch.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons I would be interested in seeing the original cut, because it seemed like
it was done out of a place of love.
All
right?
that cut. I mean, it was at a Star Wars celebration. So the Star Wars fandom that saw that original cut were overwhelmingly stoked on it.
Yeah.
And we're talking about an original cut. We're not talking about a final cut, right? So 86% of the people liked it. What if they took that and like what can we improve on this? And they got that up to like 96%. You know what I mean?
Right.
Instead of going like, well, I bring in two different producers, let's go the opposite direction is ruin this. Instead, let's be excited about this 86%. We're at 86% without even really trying. Let's push it farther, you know?
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe one day someone has that cut. Somebody has it. Somebody that's not Ernie Klein. I'm sure everyone involved, they remember how a lot of the stuff is aged poorly. A lot of the social tone deafness and just like, you know, innate bigotry of the time was there, and they're probably like, let's put that behind us, you know.
Hindsight being what it is, wouldn't have done it the same way.
Yeah. All right. We've gone super long on this, so let's do a quick.
I don't think that. I mean, like, let's find another Fanboys reaction that goes an hour and a half. I mean, this is we're putting in the work. We're doing.
Hey, can I just extend this just a little bit longer, just to say that I did watch the first few seasons of Goldberg's, and Adam F. Goldberg has an episode of the Goldbergs where his childhood character in the show, Adam Goldberg, goes on a heist mission to get the holiday special of Star Wars. And it's a whole episode's based around him trying to get a bootleg copy of this Star Wars holiday special. And all of the episodes, I mean, it's family sitcom television, so at the end he always learns some lesson.
That it wasn't worth stealing.
Yeah, and that's kind of where he comes. But he comes out of it saying it wasn't worth viewing. But who that I learned, and there's kind of like this, like it's kind of like this Wonder Years overture stuff, and like this like head voice inner monologue thing. But he talks about how it was terrible, but who was this Boba Fett? Like type thing. Like I thought it was kind of funny when I found out that Adam F. Goldberg was involved in Fanboys, because I think in a weird way this film inspired a very well written, good episode of his what was then a hit TV series.
Yeah.
This whole episode basically was a 22-minute episode with minus commercials. It essentially was Fanboys condensed into a 12-year-old child going on a heist mission. ABC primetime. 12-year-old child going on a heist mission to steal a bootleg copy of the holiday special.
Amazing.
All right, so some good came out of it. Some wholesome family entertainment came out of it, and there were no gay jokes. There were no any emasculation of any genders. It was just wholesome. And at the end of the day, I was left wondering, why did his Star Wars shirt look so retro and vintage when it would have been brand new and not so scuffed up?
Right. Well, we learn and we evolve.
Yeah. That's on the prop people. Mike, you have a word with them.
For sure. That's some caustic soap you're using. If it's aging your shirt that bad after one wash. So I do get that. Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're gonna do a really quick Den of Antiquities, and then we're gonna get out of here because it's gonna be a hell of an edit tomorrow.
Over 1,000 generations.
It is the dark saber, Torgon. Oh gosh.
It's a Calicori.
A Sith wayfinder.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
The Den of Antiquities, Easter eggs, deep dives, and so on. This whole movie is an Easter egg, but there were a few things that I thought were worth calling out that weren't quite as obvious, and we mentioned some things about the reshoot and some stuff like that. So got like half a dozen here. Mike, you want to read these?
Sure. So there's probably a lot more if we were to go back and watch this bad movie, but I think we have a decent little grip right here. Well, first of all, Hutch's van is called Slave 2. Now, of course, post Google, when you're Googling Slave 1, Grandma wants to Google Slave 1 Star Wars, is probably going to turn up in Google search some pretty interesting stuff. So it is now being referred to as Boba Fett's starship, as he calls the Fire Spray, which is the model of the ship. So Hutch's van, though, at the time, was still called the Slave 1, is called the Slave 2, which makes sense. The side of the van says Fanboys backwards in Aurebesh. So we have a shout out to this, of course, goes back into where Star Wars has kind of flip-flopped on itself about where some of these original fonts were from. Sometimes the graphic designers on the show don't use old stuff, and sometimes it's fan made and blah, blah, blah. So it is backwards, but it does say Fanboys on it.
But it's also, it's not just the characters aren't mirrored. It's entirely
literally backwards. Yeah.
So I wonder if they did the die cut sticker and they were like, oops,
forgot to flip it.
Nobody will notice.
Yep.
Yeah.
A big point, of course, is when they're escaping from the police and they go to, you can actually hear the sound of the Millennium Falcon powering down, which I thought was pretty funny. So if you heard that,
it's great.
Yep. There's all kinds of stuff. And then, obviously R2 screeching and all of that by design. So there's plenty of things in the movie that there are great little details all over the place. Like you can see that there's clearly a lot of people who were fans making this. Lucasfilm security, of course, are dressed as the police from George Lucas's first student film, then turned feature film, THX 1138, the guys with the silver faces, which you could certainly say, I believe, are inspiration for Enoch from Thrawn's new undead army. With gold face in that movie, they're nameless police officers. So I think it's certainly not, they weren't trying to hide it, but I think it's funny that they were walking around at the Skywalker Ranch. Millennium Falcon.
I know, like, you make us wear this.
You make us wear, right? Which would make sense. So the Millennium Falcon, when they hold it up and everyone's like, whoa, as if it's like the actual filming model. The Millennium Falcon in that was literally just a Power of the Force Millennium Falcon. That thing was about $60 at your Toys R Us, and it absolutely should not have been in Lucas's personal office. But I thought it was funny that he picked it up, and everyone's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!" The interrogation scene at Skywalker Ranch was reshot. The original head of security was William Cate, who is from the movie Carrie in 1976, and was also in. What does this Adam say? The Greatest American Hero?
It was like a superhero show.
Right.
Yeah. Like he has a face. It's a that guy face. For people who are older than us, they probably know exactly who he is. But he was in the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid like prequel.
Got it.
It was called Young Butch and the Kid or something like that. He played one of them, and he has this. God, he looks like somebody else. But he's a handsome blonde-haired, old school Hollywood hunk looking ass dude. You'll recognize his face.
Reshot by Danny McBride himself, who would later go on to become Danny McBride as we know him as Danny McBride. The scene where Windows runs into Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes at the gas station was directed by Kevin Smith's longtime friend and producer Scott Mosier as one of the Weinstein-ordered reshoots. So it was certainly a cameo put in there. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. Didn't add anything to the movie. But then again, to say that you would have Kevin Smith and Mewes in the movie was probably a cross-promotional thing or to get names on credits or favors, whatever happened. But they were certainly in it, and that's the story behind that. Other details, like, if you look through when they go into the quote unquote the archives, there's like probably 20 things in there. Those were not really the archives. And I hope people know that. There's all kinds of stuff, like there's more toys in there than anything. There wasn't anything that actually seemed of substance. A lot of that was Don Post stuff. The Vader helmet was wrong. The chest box was wrong. Like, it was hilarious. So the Den of Antiquities is, I would like to go through and probably re-add to this, but I think for now, it was a fan loved film. I can see while people were working on it, and that's cool.
Well, this has been quite a trip down. I can't say memory lane because it's the first time I saw it, down a historical avenue. Yeah. It's been an interesting dissection of what I think is, while not a quality film, like an interesting piece of history, an interesting historical document that I'm glad we could check out. And if nothing else, it puts into perspective like how far we've come culturally and as a fandom.
Sure.
And it's a nice reminder that Harvey Weinstein was a piece of shit on all levels, and it's great that he has been extricated from our lives.
Society. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. Deon, you have something coming up that you should probably shout out, right? With your band.
Anberlin is playing. We're doing back-to-back nights here at a venue in Tampa with it's going to be our singer Steven's last two North American shows before he takes a break from touring. One of the nights, December 15th, is actually going to be live stream. If you did not get a ticket to the shows because they sold out pretty fast, you can get a live stream ticket if you just want to watch it from the comfort of your couch, which is something I would do as a 43-year-old lazy person. But we've got basically what are they're essentially holiday shows / Steven's send off here in a week from tomorrow.
Nice.
Well, at the time of this recording, tomorrow. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. We start rehearsing and doing all the fun stuff here and getting ready for that. It's daunting. We're gonna play some a few deep cuts that we haven't played in a while. We kind of asked Steven, hey, what are some songs you want to play that we don't normally play live and stuff like that. So it'll be a fun time, a little
Always
bittersweet,
a fun
but also fun. Yeah, we got a Hawthorne Heights gonna be on that show, which is, we all know and love the Hawthorne Heights dudes, so that's gonna be fun as well. And then just in general, catch me posting very sporadically on Instagram at Rexroat. That's about the only place I am active on social media. So yeah,
nice. I assume everyone can find links to the is it a stream that you pay for, or is this a free stream? What's the deal?
Yeah, no, it's going to be a ticketed stream. If you just go to amberlin.com, or if you go to any of the Amberlin social media properties, there'll be links to everything. As much as I would just love to just make it a free stream, obviously people that paid to be at the show would be pissed. So,
right, for sure.
So yeah, there's anything you want to know, you can just go to amberlin.com or at Amberlin Instagram, Amberlin Facebook, all that. That's all that information's there. There's a link that'll take you to any ticketing things, or if you've already got a ticket to the show and you want to grab a VIP add-on package, you can do that there as well.
Sweet.
It's all in one place. It's how we do.
Nice. On the internet.
Yeah.
We have some fun stuff coming up on the podcast in the next few weeks, despite having no new Star Wars stuff to cover. Well, there's something kind of. So a documentary dropped yesterday at the time of this recording on December 5th, a documentary about the Star Wars holiday special called A Disturbance in the Force that apparently people are super stoked on. I'm probably going to watch it tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We're going to cover that next week. And then probably not the following week, but...
Wait, real quick, where can we watch that? Because I literally just found out about this right now, so I will watch it.
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Oh, okay, YouTube. Okay,
yeah, I think you can rent it or buy it, but I think it's pretty affordable. I think it's only like $2 or $3.
Yeah, getting that for show.
I wouldn't even pay that for this movie we just reviewed tonight. So. I watched it on Pluto, which, by the way, Pluto mobile app is the worst app ever. There were points where I would try to back up to make a note, and then it would just restart the movie.
Oh,
it happened to me multiple times. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
I just bought it. I bought it for $7. I just did it. We're also going to do something probably not the week after next, maybe the last episode of the year, or maybe we'll do it after the new year. But I want to do it sooner than later. We did recently an episode where we pitched our own Star Wars stories. I thought it would be cool to extend that exercise, this fun little game, to the patrons and let patrons submit Star Wars stories to do like a story pitch contest, essentially. Mm-hmm. So this will be open to... I'll take a look at the tiers and see if there's anything that limits this, but nonetheless, open this up to the patrons, submit, and then we'll, between the four of us, pick maybe our 4 favorites. We'll each read one or something like that.
Sure.
And then whoever is the winner, maybe we'll select finalists. Maybe we'll do a poll to see who's the winner. We'll work out the details. Maybe have that person come on and pitch it in more detail on the next week or something like that. So I just thought that would be fun to get some more ideas out there and engage more with our patrons. Patreon.com/ThankTheMakerPod is where you can go if you want to be one of those people who supports this thing and makes it possible. We appreciate it a ton. Also, MoshIsley.com is the place you want to go if you want to get tickets for Mosh Isley Orlando, which is February 3rd, the weekend of MegaCon. You can also get merch there. We're doing merch bundles just like we did last time around, where you can buy on the website and pick up at the show.
We have sold a lot of tickets. It is going to be a crazy good party. So please, please, please make sure you get your tickets. Don't sleep on it. Buy your Christmas presents, buy your holiday presents, do whatever you got to do. But this one is already we have 2 months left to go, and we are over halfway sold out. So
selling a lot faster than the past.
Yeah. So as it gets closer to MegaCon, and we'll be involved with Roosevelt's, and Roosevelt's just announced that they're having the pre-party for Mosh, which is really cool. So if you want to get one of those exclusive shirts like we have, definitely just sign up with Roosevelt's and then get in, but make sure you have your ticket to Mosh. So let's do it.
Also, shout out to Heroes and Villains. Heroes and Villains. I just I got some stuff from them the other day. I can't remember. Look at that.
There we go. Look at that. Clone Force 99.
I think it is. Sorry to cut in on the representation here, but to go back to Mos Eisley, since you guys are going to be so close to me, I am going to be dropping in, and I'm so stoked.
What
Nice.
are we revealing that
excited.
Deon's going to be at Mos Eisley on this episode?
I'm just going to throw it in now since I'm
love
right
it.
here.
Spoiler.
I mean, the only thing that's going to stop me is if the fact that I will be completely jet lagged from just landing from Australia a few days prior. But no,
That's good
I'm
for you.
stoked. No, that's a good party is good for curing jet lag. We all know this.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I'm excited that you guys are going to be in Orlando, and I'm excited I'm going to be there hanging out. Super stoked.
Be awesome.
Good times. Like I said, got some stuff from Heroes and Villains the other day, which is dope. Got a backpack, got a bunch of like accessories and things. They're super dope. And we're partnering with them going forward. Maker20 is the offer code if you want to get a discount on your first purchase there. I don't know the discount off the top of my head. I'm all over the place with this, but Maker20, no spaces. We'll start to share that, and maybe we'll do show and tell next week.
Cool.
With our stuff.
Cool.
All right, Deon, thanks again for being here, bud.
Thanks for having me. It's so much fun.
Good
as
times.
always. Am I the only 3-time guest on the show?
You may be. You're the only 3-time bass player guest. I know
I like that.
We'll
Rhythm
see.
section, very representative here.
If there's another 3-time guest, we'll set up a cage match between you and that person, and you might have to vanquish them.
It's fine.
Right.
All right.
That's good.
Patrons, thanks for being patrons. We love you. Everybody, thanks for watching and listening wherever you're watching and listening from. And until next week, may the Force be with you.